Hidden Horror, the Adam Strong Investigation. Welcome to another episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Nicoll, Nicoll Investigations. In our historical true crime series, we dive deep into the stories that have left an indelible mark on Ontario and beyond. Today we're tackling one of the most chilling and disturbing cases in recent Canadian history. The story of Adam Strong, a man who lived a quiet, unassuming life in Oshawa, Ontario, but concealed the darkness that led to the tragic deaths of two young women, Rori Hache and Kandis Fitzpatrick. This case stunned the local community, exposing the vulnerabilities of those on society's margins, and highlighting the immense challenges faced by law enforcement in piecing together such horrific crimes. Over the next minutes, we'll unravel this haunting tale, from the disappearances that baffled investigators to the shocking discoveries that finally brought a killer to justice. Before we begin, a note of sensitivity. The lives of Rori Hache and Kandis Fitzpatrick were taken in brutal, unimaginable ways, leaving their families with grief that endures to this day. This episode is dedicated to their memory and to the pursuit of justice that followed. So let's start by getting to know Rori and Kandis, not just as victims, but as the vibrant individuals they were before tragedy struck. Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. It's a gripping true crime podcast uncovering unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from Ontario and beyond. Told with deep research, compelling storytelling, and a voice for the victims. Join us today, where every clue could lead to answers, and every case deserves a second look. Victims' backgrounds. Rori Hache, a life cut short. Rori Hache came into the world on January 21st, 1999, born to Shannon Dion and her father, whose identity remains private in public records, in the working-class city of Oshawa, Ontario. From her earliest days, Rori was a burst of energy, a child with a radiant smile and a love for creative expression. Her mother, Shannon, often reminisced about Rori's passion for music and art, saying she was a bright light in her lives, always humming a tune or sketching something in her notebook, even when things got tough. Growing up in a modest home, Rori was surrounded by a tight-knit family. Shannon worked tirelessly, often taking on multiple jobs, waitressing, retail shifts, to provide for Rori and her siblings in a community where economic stability could be elusive. Rori's childhood was filled with small joys, family trips to Lake Ontario, where she'd splash in the shallows, and quiet evenings at home, where she'd lose herself in drawing or listening to her favorite bands. But as she entered her teenage years, cracks began to appear. Around 15, Rori started grappling with mental health challenges, anxiety and depression that she'd kept hidden from most. Friends noticed her withdrawing, and soon after, she turned to substances as a coping mechanism. Marijuana gave way to harder drugs, and by 16, Rori was caught in the grip of addiction. It was like watching her slip away, Shannon later shared, her voice heavy with regret. She was still my little girl, but I couldn't reach her. The spiral led Rori into sex work, a dangerous path she took to fund her habit. Despite this, she remained tethered to her family. Shannon tried everything, counseling, rehab programs, even driving Rori to appointments herself. But the pull of addiction was relentless. In early 2017, a glimmer of hope emerged. Rori discovered she was pregnant. At 18, she faced this news with a mix of fear and excitement. She was scared out of her mind, Shannon recalled. She wanted to be a mom. She talked about giving her baby a better life, a fresh start. The family rallied around her, hoping this could be the turning point. Tragically, that hope would be extinguished. On August 29, 2017, Rori was last seen in downtown Oshawa, a familiar haunt where she often met friends or clients. She wore a black tank top and jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and told Shannon she'd be home later that night. When she didn't return, Shannon's maternal instincts kicked in. After 2 days of unanswered calls and growing dread, she reported Rori missing to the Durham Regional Police on August 31st. The family's world began to crumble as they waited for answers that wouldn't come for months. Kandis Fitzpatrick. A decade of uncertainty. Kandis Fitzpatrick was born on March 3, 1989 in Oshawa to Bill Fitzpatrick and his wife, whose name has stayed out of the public eye. Kandis was a free spirit from the start, adventurous, kind-hearted, and fiercely independent. Her father, Bill, loved to recount her childhood antics. She climbed trees higher than the boys, always with that big, fearless grin. She could light up a room just by walking in. The Fitzpatrick family cherished their time outdoors, camping along the shores of Lake Simcoe, fishing in local streams, or simply barbecuing in their backyard. Kandis thrived in those moments, her laughter a constant soundtrack to their lives. But as Kandis hit her late teens, her path veered. Around 17, she began experimenting with drugs, a habit that escalated after a tumultuous breakup and the loss of a close friend. By 19, addiction had taken hold, pulling her away from the stability of home. She started living internally, crashing with friends who were in shelters, and turned to sex work to survive. We knew she was struggling, Bill said, but she'd always call or show up eventually. We thought she'd find her way back. Her family never gave up, driving through Oshawa's rougher neighborhoods to check on her, leaving messages with anyone who might know her whereabouts. In the spring of 2008, Kandis was last seen by her family. She stopped by the house looking thinner than usual but still flashing that familiar smile. Bill gave her some cash and a hug, promising to see her soon. That was the last time they'd hear her voice. For months, the Fitzpatricks searched informally, calling shelters, hospitals, even posting flyers, but Kandis had vanished. In 2010, after 2 years of silence, they officially reported her missing to the Durham Regional Police. We thought maybe she moved away, started over, Bill reflected. But deep down, we knew something wasn't right. The not knowing was a slow torture. For nearly a decade, Kandis's case sat dormant, cold file in the system, overwhelmed by similar stories. Her family held on to fading hope, marking her birthday each year with a quiet prayer. It would take a gruesome discovery years later to reveal the heartbreaking truth. Up next, the disappearances. The disappearances. Rori Hache's disappearance. When Rori Hache vanished on August 29, 2017, sent her family into a tailspin. Downtown Oshawa was her usual stomping ground. A gritty mix of bars, pawn shops, and low-rent apartments where she'd meet friends or clients. Shannon last spoke to her that afternoon. Rori sounded upbeat, promising to be home by evening. But as night fell and her phone went unanswered, panic set in. She always checked it, Shannon told police. Even on her worst days, she let me know she was safe. The family sprang into action. Shannon and Rori's siblings hit the streets, knocking on doors and handing out flyers with Rori's photo, a bright-eyed young woman with a shy smile. Friends joined the effort, checking known hangouts, but no one had seen her. By August 31st, with no leads, Shannon filed a missing persons report with the Durham Regional Police. The investigation started slowly. Rori's transient lifestyle made her hard to track, and her involvement in sex work added layers of complexity. Police interviewed acquaintances, but the trail was thin, and early efforts yielded little. Then on September 11, 2017, a grim discovery shattered the silence. A man and his grandson fishing near Oshawa Harbor pulled a human torso from the water. The remains were badly decomposed, wrapped in plastic, and weighed down with rocks. It took forensic experts until November 10th to confirm the identity through DNA. It was Rori Hache. The news devastated her family and shifted the case to a homicide investigation. Yet with no suspect and no clear connection to the harbor, police were stumped until a chance event months later blew the case wide open. Kandis Fitzpatrick's disappearance. Kandis Fitzpatrick's disappearance unfolded more gradually. Slow bleed of hope for her family. Last seen in spring 2008, Kandis had been drifting for years, her addiction pulling her further from home. Bill Fitzpatrick remembered their final meeting vividly. She'd shown up unannounced, her clothes worn and her frame gaunt, but her spirit intact. She hugged me tight, he said, and promised she'd call soon. I believed her. When weeks turned to months with no word, the family's worry deepened. They launched their own search, driving through Oshawa's underbelly, talking to street contacts and checking shelters from Toronto to Peterborough. Bill even hired a private investigator briefly, but the trail was cold. In 2010, after 2 years of fruitless efforts, they reported her missing to the Durham Regional Police. The case was logged, but with no recent sightings, no phone activity, no physical evidence, and languished. Kandis's lifestyle, unpredictable and undocumented, made her a ghost in the system. She was invisible to them, Bill said bitterly, but she wasn't invisible to us. For nearly a decade, the Fitzpatricks lived in a limbo of grief and uncertainty, their daughter's fate an open wound. It wasn't until 2017, when another case broke, that the pieces of Kandis's story would finally fall into place. The investigation. The breakthrough, December 29, 2017. The Adam Strong case pivoted on a single, stomach-churning moment. On December 29, 2017, Strong, a 45-year-old tenant in a basement apartment at 80 McMillan Drive, Oshawa, called a plumber to fix a stubborn drain clog. The plumber, expecting a routine job, was horrified to find human flesh blocking the pipe. Soft tissue, unmistakably human, tangled in the plumbing. He fled the scene and dialed 911, setting off a chain of events that would unravel years of hidden horror. Durham Regional Police descended on the apartment that day. What they found was a nightmare. Rori Hache's dismembered remains, meticulously stored in a chest freezer in Strong's cluttered living space. As officers questioned him, Strong's demeanor was unnervingly calm. "Okay, you got me," he said, according to police reports. "The gig's up. It's a body." That chilling admission, captured on body cameras, was a first crack in his facade, and the beginning of a sprawling investigation that would link him to 2 murders. Forensic analysis and police work. The scene at McMillan Drive became a forensic goldmine. Police cordoned off the apartment and a team of experts moved in. Crime scene analysts, pathologists, and DNA specialists, all working to piece together the story locked in the evidence. Rori Hache's remains. The torso found in Oshawa Harbor had already been identified as Rori's, but the freezer held more. Her head, limbs, and other parts wrapped in plastic bags. Forensic pathologists determined she'd been killed shortly after disappearing in August 2017, likely by blunt force trauma, then dismembered with a sharp blade. The careful preservation suggested premeditation, a killer intent on hiding his work. Kandis Fitzpatrick's DNA. A hunting knife recovered from Strong's apartment bore traces of blood. Advanced DNA analysis matched it to Kandis Fitzpatrick, whose genetic profile had been on file since 2010, when her family provided samples. This breakthrough tied Strong to a crime nearly a decade old, though the absence of her remains complicated the picture. Additional evidence. Luminol revealed blood traces throughout the apartment, on the floors, walls, even the bathroom sink. Strong's phone records placed him near Oshawa Harbour in late August 2017, aligning with when Rory's torso was dumped. Divers scoured the harbour, recovering personal items. A bracelet identified as Rory's, torn piece of clothing, possibly Kandis's, linking both victims to the water. The investigation faced hurdles. Kandis's case, cold for years, lacked fresh witnesses or intact remains, forcing reliance on forensic links. Rory's transient lifestyle meant few could pinpoint her last movements. Yet Strong's own words, the physical evidence, built a damning case. Detectives worked tirelessly, interviewing neighbors who recalled Strong's reclusive nature, tracking his routines, painting a picture of a predator hiding in plain sight. Up next, Adam Strong, the man behind the crimes. Adam Strong, the man behind the crimes. Adam Strong was born around 1973, though exact details of his early life are sparse. Raised in Ontario, he eventually settled in Oshawa, living in a nondescript basement apartment that belied the horrors within. By all accounts, Strong was a loner, quiet, unassuming, the kind of neighbor who faded into the background. He worked odd jobs over the years, pumping gas, doing security in film sets, and occasionally laboring in warehouses. He kept to himself, one neighbor told police. You'd see him coming and going, but he never said much. Beneath his exterior, Strong harbored dark tendencies. Court records later revealed his interest in BDSM, a detail that surfaced during the trial. While not inherently criminal, it may be an allure for his victims, both of whom engaged in sex work. Point of vulnerability he exploited. Investigators believe he targeted Rori and Kandis because their lifestyles made them less likely to be missed immediately, giving him time to cover his tracks. Strong had no significant criminal record before 2017, just minor brushes with the law, traffic tickets, a bar scuffle years prior that never hinted at violence. This clean slate let him operate undetected. His methodical disposal methods, dismemberment, plumbing, the harbor, showing a calculated mind. How he went from an ordinary man to a killer remains a question mark. Psychiatric evaluations were inconclusive, but his actions left a trail of devastation. The trial, pre-trial, and legal strategies. Adam Strong faced trial on September 28, 2020, at Oshawa Superior Court, charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Justice Joseph DeLuca presided over a judge-alone trial, a pandemic-driven decision that avoided jury delays. The prosecution, armed with forensic evidence and strong statements, aimed to prove premeditation. The defense countered by challenging evidence reliability and intent, especially in Kandis's older case, seeking to downgrade charges to manslaughter. Key testimonies and evidence. The trial unfolded over weeks, a grim theater of facts and emotion. The plumber's account. The plumber took the stand first, his voice trembling as he described pulling flesh from the drain. I knew it wasn't normal, he said. I ran out and called the cops. His testimony anchored the discovery narrative. Forensic testimony. Experts detailed the science, how Rory's remains were identified, how Kandis's DNA clung to the knife. The pathologist explained the dismemberment process, noting the precision of the cuts, while a DNA analyst walked through the probability of a match, over 99.9% for Kandis. Police evidence. Responding officers recounted the arrest, playing body cam footage of Strong's "You got me" moment. Detectives outlined the harbor searches and phone data, building a timeline of his movements. Defense pushback. Strong's lawyers grilled forensic witnesses on contamination risks and questioned the phone evidence's precision, suggesting alternative scenarios, like another person using Strong's device. The courtroom was heavy with tension, the victims' families listening as their daughter's final moments were dissected. Verdict and sentencing. On March 16, 2021, Justice DeLuca delivered his ruling. Strong was convicted of first-degree murder for Rori Hache. The planning evident in her dismemberment and disposal warranted the charge. For Kandis Fitzpatrick, he received a manslaughter conviction. The lack of her remains and direct evidence of intent left premeditation unproven. Sentencing came on May 28, 2021. Life with no parole for 25 years for Rori's murder, plus a concurrent 18 years for Kandis's manslaughter. Strong showed no emotion as the gavel fell. Up next, aftermath and community impact. Aftermath and community impact. The verdicts brought closure but no comfort to the families. Shannon Dion's victim impact statement was raw. "This is a nightmare I'll never wake from. Rori was my baby, and he took her from me." Bill Fitzpatrick spoke of the decade lost to uncertainty. Not knowing if she was alive was torture. Now we know, and it's a different kind of hell. Well, families grieved not just the loss, but the brutality of it. Oshawa reeled. Vigils sprang up, candles flickering outside City Hall, flowers piling up near the harbor. Hundreds mourned Rori and Kandis, their names etched in the community memory. Local papers ran front-page stories, editorials decrying the tragedy under their noses. The case spurred action. Advocacy groups like Sex Workers Action Network demanded better protections for marginalized women, citing Rori and Kandis as stark examples of systemic failure. The Durham Regional Police reviewed their missing persons protocols, admitting cases like Kandis's often slip through the cracks. Community forums debated safety measures, more street lighting, outreach programs, hoping to prevent another such loss. Broader conversations emerged too, about addiction, sex work stigma, and the need to see the invisible. No one should be forgotten, a local pastor said in a memorial. Rori and Kandis mattered. So as we wrap this episode, the Adam Strong case leaves us with heavy hearts and hard questions. Rori Hache and Kandis Fitzpatrick were daughters, dreamers, lives snuffed out by a predator who thrived in the shadows. Their story is a call to action, to protect the vulnerable, to demand justice, to remember. I'm Jay Nicoll, thanking you for joining me on Ontario Cold Cases. These stories aren't easy, but they're vital. Until next time, stay safe and hold your loved ones close, because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Subscribe now to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Episodes available wherever you get your podcasts.